The water at Crystal Lake was still that morning, eerily still, as if holding its breath. A blanket of fog clung to the surface, swallowing the reflection of the newly built Crystal Lake resort. The cabins gleamed with fresh paint, the docks stretched neatly into the mist, and the forest whispered secrets the world had long tried to forget. For the new staff, it was just another job, summer money, sunlight, and the promise of fun. But beneath the soil, under the concrete and polished veneer, something ancient still stirred. Something that had watched in silence for years. Lila Hart zipped her jacket and walked toward the docks with her clipboard. She was the new head counselor, 26, practical, but curious to a fault. "Gotta make sure the watercrafts are secured," she muttered, her boots crunching against the dew. Behind her, 3 counselors followed, Noah, the cocky lifeguard with a grin too confident for his own good, Aaron, quiet and thoughtful, carrying the first aid kit, and Max, the jokester, filming everything with his phone. "Can you believe this place used to be Camp Crystal Lake?" Max said, panning the camera toward the water. "The actual murder site. My followers are gonna eat this up." "Real classy," Aaron said. "Let's not joke about it, okay?" "Oh, come on. It's been, what, 40 years?" Max laughed. "The killer's dead, the camp's rebuilt, and now we've got a hot tub. History's just history." Lila didn't laugh. She stopped at the edge of the dock and stared into the fog. Some things don't stay buried. The water rippled, just slightly, as if something large moved beneath it. That evening, the resort owner, Mr. Hollis, gathered everyone around the newly lit bonfire. He was an older man with a salesman's smile and the kind of voice that could turn tragedy into opportunity. "Folks, this place is about rebirth. We've taken cursed land and given it life again. People told me I was crazy for building here, but I don't believe in curses. I believe in progress." The counselors clapped politely, though Aaron's eyes stayed on the dark tree line. The woods looked like they were breathing, swaying not with the wind, but with a pulse of their own. "Legend says," Max whispered dramatically, "that Jason Voorhees still haunts these woods. They say he can't die. He just waits." "Enough," Lila said, her voice sharper than she intended. "Those are stories, not reality." But she couldn't stop herself from glancing over her shoulder. The fire's light flickered against the trees, and for a moment, she swore she saw movement. Something tall. Still. Watching. After the bonfire, as the group dispersed, Lila lingered by the dock again. The fog had thickened, heavy as smoke. A strange sound echoed across the lake, like metal dragging against wood. Her flashlight cut through the mist, landing on something floating near the shallows. A wooden plank. No, something under it. She knelt, reaching out. Her fingers brushed the edge of the plank, and the water rippled again. Beneath the surface, she saw something glint. Rusted. Curved. She pulled it free. A machete. Its blade eaten away by time, but still unmistakably sharp. Her breath hitched. "What the hell?" "Hey, boss lady," Max called from behind her. "You find treasure?" Lila turned to shush him, but froze. Behind him, in the fog, there was a figure. Massive. Hulking. Unmoving. The outline of a man. She blinked, and it was gone. "Lila?" Max frowned. "You good?" "Yeah," she said slowly, though her pulse thundered in her ears. "I think it's time we head in." That night, the fog refused to lift. It rolled across the resort like a living thing, seeping through cracks, curling around doors, licking at windows. Lila sat in her cabin, staring at the machete on the table. The handle was cracked, the blade caked with dark rust that looked suspiciously like dried blood. Outside, a lone frog croaked once, and then silence. She leaned closer to the window, trying to see through the mist. A faint thud echoed in the distance. Then another. Slow. Rhythmic. Thud, thud, thud. Her breath fogged the glass. Max? Noah? The porch light flickered. Then went out. In the faint reflection of the window, behind her, a shape loomed. Huge. Masked. The sound of metal dragging against the floor. And a whisper from the darkness, low and cold, like the lake itself speaking after decades of silence. Legends don't die, they wait. Morning came late to Crystal Lake. The fog didn't lift, it just thinned enough to let the gray sunlight through. Dew clung to everything like cold sweat, and a faint metallic scent hung in the air, sharp and wrong. Lila barely slept. The image of that shape in the window haunted her mind. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the glint of the machete, the faceless mask hovering just beyond reach. She'd convinced herself it was a trick of the light. Had to be. Still, she found herself clutching the blade like a security blanket when she stepped outside. Noah was at the boathouse, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You look like hell," he said. "Thanks," Lila muttered. "Listen, did you or anyone mess with the power last night?" He shook his head. "Nope." "Why?" The lights flickered. "I thought I saw someone outside my cabin." "Probably one of the construction guys," he said, trying to sound casual. "Half this place is still under renovation." But his voice wavered. He'd heard something too. The pounding, like boots in mud. Later that day, while checking the property boundaries, Aaron stumbled upon something strange near the forest's edge. The ground there was softer, disturbed, like something had recently been unearthed. "Lila," she called. The others joined her, gathering around a patch of earth half swallowed by roots and moss. A section of old, splintered floorboards jutted out of the dirt. It looked man-made. Max knelt, brushing away leaves. "What the hell is this? Looks like part of a cabin." "A cabin?" Lila frowned. "There's nothing on the map here." Noah grabbed a shovel from the truck. Only one way to find out. Within minutes, they had exposed the remains of a rotted staircase descending into the ground, like the forest itself had swallowed a building whole. The smell that rose from below was foul and wet, like old blood and decay. "Dude," Max muttered, covering his nose. "This is insane. We just found, like, ancient murder basement level stuff." Lila shined her flashlight into the opening. The beam cut through darkness, revealing walls of warped wood and rusted chains hanging from the beams. Something glittered in the corner, metal again. "Let's go," Aaron whispered. "We shouldn't be here." But curiosity pulled Lila forward. "Just a quick look. Then we reported to Hollis." She descended first, boots sinking into damp earth. The others followed, their lights shaking. The air grew heavier the deeper they went. And then they saw it. The cabin's interior was half collapsed, filled with debris, rotting cots, broken chairs, and waterlogged photographs stuck to the walls. Old newspaper clippings fluttered under their lights. "Camp Crystal Lake Massacre, bodies found at site. Jason Voorhees still missing." No one spoke. The silence in that space was absolute. It felt like being buried alive. Max's flashlight landed on something propped against the wall, a dusty, cracked hockey mask. He laughed nervously. "Okay, no way this is real." But when Lila picked it up, her fingers trembled. The inside was lined with dried, dark stains. The straps were stiff with age. As her thumb brushed the edge, the ground shuddered. A dull creak echoed through the buried cabin. "Lila," Aaron whispered, her voice trembling. "Put it down." But Lila couldn't move. She stared at the mask, transfixed, as if something unseen had reached through the years to pull her closer. And then she heard it. That sound again. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy footsteps. Above them. The others froze. "Someone's up there," Noah said, barely breathing. The footsteps circled the cabin's entrance, slow and deliberate, like a predator testing its trap. Then, silence. Lila turned to lead them out, but the staircase was gone. The earth had shifted, collapsed inward, leaving only packed soil where the exit had been. Max started to panic. "We're trapped. We're freaking trapped." "Quiet," Lila hissed. That's when the breathing began. Deep. Guttural. Coming from the darkness behind them. Noah swung his flashlight toward the sound, and dropped it immediately. In the beam's flicker, they saw a shadow in the far corner. Immense. Human, but not. It moved with a slow, deliberate motion, each step grinding dirt beneath its boots. The smell of rot filled the air, thick and choking. "Run!" Lila screamed. They scrambled for the far wall, clawing at the soil, trying to dig upward, desperate for daylight. The cabin creaked and groaned around them like a coffin closing. The machete's gleam cut through the dark, swift, brutal, final. A scream tore the silence apart. Then another. The lake above rippled violently, though there was no wind. Hours later, the forest was still again. The hole in the ground was gone, as if it had never existed. Only Lila's flashlight remained, half buried in mud, its beam pointed toward the trees. The mask lay beside it, wet, clean, and waiting. Vera Johnson had spent the last 40 years trying to forget Crystal Lake. The screams, the smell of smoke and blood, the sound of a machete cleaving through flesh, all buried beneath layers of therapy, medication, and silence. But nightmares have long memories. The call came 2 days after the resort's opening. A man from the county sheriff's department, his voice grave. "Miss Johnson, we have reason to believe something's happening at the new Crystal Lake Resort. People are missing. We thought you might want to know." Her heart froze. 40 years later, the lake was calling her home. The drive north felt like descending into another lifetime. The trees grew denser, older, the road narrower. Every bend seemed to whisper. She could almost hear the children's laughter echoing faintly from the past, the laughter that had turned to screams one long summer ago. Vera gripped the wheel tighter. Her knuckles turned white. She still remembered the eyes of the boy who drowned, the one who came back. Jason Voorhees. The boy who never should have been alive. And she remembered his mother. Pamela Voorhees. That name alone made her stomach twist. The first killer. The woman who had murdered everyone she loved in her blind rage. And then Jason came back to finish what his mother started. But Jason had died. She'd seen it, she'd watched his body burn. Hadn't she? By the time she reached the outskirts of the resort, the sun had begun to set behind the trees. The sign ahead read, "Welcome to Crystal Lake Resort, where the past meets paradise." The irony made her sick. The place looked new, almost beautiful, modern cabins, a glass-walled main lodge, fresh gravel paths. But beneath the manicured perfection was something rotten. The air smelled faintly of algae and old iron. A young deputy met her at the gate. "Miss Johnson. Sheriff asked me to show you around. We've had 3 missing employees, no signs of them. Phones stopped working last night. Power's unstable. Show me the lake," she said. He hesitated. "Ma'am, maybe you shouldn't." "Show me," she repeated, her tone like steel. The water was calm when they reached the dock. Too calm. The surface looked like a sheet of black glass. Vera stepped closer, peering into the depths. For a moment, she saw nothing. Then, just faintly, a shape moved beneath the reflection. "Did you see that?" she whispered. The deputy shined his flashlight. Probably a fish. But Vera knew better. She could feel it. The same presence she'd felt 40 years ago. A cold awareness, something ancient and hateful, stirring from its sleep. Inside the main lodge, the few remaining staff huddled together, Lila among them, her face pale and eyes hollow. "You were here before," Lila said when Vera entered. "You survived him." "Yes," Vera said softly. "I did. But survival isn't living." Lila told her everything, the buried cabin, the mask, the machete. With every word, Vera's expression darkened. "You found his home," she said. "That's what woke him up." "Woke him up?" Noah said, disbelief breaking through his fear. "You're saying Jason Voorhees, what, crawled out of the dirt?" Vera's gaze was cold. "He doesn't crawl. He rises." A crash echoed from outside, the sound of breaking glass. The power flickered. "Stay here," the deputy ordered, drawing his weapon. He moved toward the door, flashlight sweeping the dark. Silence. Then. A wet, heavy thud. The flashlight rolled back across the floor, splattered in red. Something massive stepped through the doorway, dragging the deputy's body behind it. The counselors froze. Lila felt her lungs seize. The man was enormous, towering, broad-shouldered, his clothes shredded and soaked. His head tilted slightly, as though studying them. The mask, cracked and rusted, covered half his face. Jason Voorhees had returned. The machete gleamed in his hand. "Run!" Vera shouted. The group scattered. Jason moved like a storm, silent, unstoppable. His machete arced down, splitting the wooden railing as if it were paper. Lila and Vera sprinted down the corridor, the sound of boots pounding behind them. "Why is he still here?" Lila gasped. "Because we never gave him peace," Vera said, her voice shaking. "He doesn't die. He waits." They reached the back door and stumbled into the night. The lake glistened ahead, silver under the moonlight. Somewhere behind them, the screams of the others tore through the forest. Vera turned back once and saw him framed in the doorway, taller than memory, more monstrous than myth. Jason stepped into the moonlight, droplets of water falling from his mask like tears. The legend had awakened. And this time, it wasn't just vengeance. It was hunger. The screams didn't stop. They echoed through the resort like a warning, bouncing off the trees, swallowed by the fog that refused to lift. Vera and Lila ran until their lungs burned. The woods were darker than night itself, the mist thick enough to choke on. Behind them, the sound of crashing footsteps followed, a rhythm of death that grew louder, steadier, more determined. "Keep going!" Vera shouted, grabbing Lila's arm as she stumbled over a fallen branch. Lila gasped, tears streaking her face. "He killed them all, Vera. He killed everyone." "I know," Vera hissed, pulling her deeper into the forest. "That's what he does." They reached a clearing, a narrow dock stretching over the black mirror of the lake. The water shimmered faintly, glowing with reflected moonlight. It was eerily calm, as though nothing could disturb it. "Boat," Vera said, pointing to a small motorboat tied to the post. "If we can get across, we might make it to the ranger station on the north shore." Lila jumped in, hands trembling as she tried to start the engine. The key jammed, the motor sputtered and coughed, but wouldn't turn over. Come on," she muttered, slamming the ignition. Vera turned toward the tree line. The forest was silent now. That silence was worse than the noise. "Lila," she whispered. From the fog, a shape emerged. Huge. Slow. Certain. Jason. The machete hung at his side, dripping red. The moonlight gleamed off his mask, revealing one cracked eye hole and the dark, pulsing void behind it. Lila screamed, twisting the key again. The motor roared to life just as Jason stepped onto the dock. "Go!" Vera yelled. The boat lurched forward, the dock splintering beneath Jason's boots. He swung the machete down, missing Vera by inches as she dove into the boat. The blade sliced through the rope instead, freeing them, but sending the dock collapsing into the water. Jason fell with it. The lake exploded in a splash of black water. They drifted out fast, hearts pounding. Vera's eyes stayed on the surface. "Don't look away from the water," she said softly. "He doesn't drown." "What do you mean?" Lila whispered. "He never dies in the water," Vera said, voice trembling. "He was born of it." The motor sputtered halfway across the lake and died. The silence that followed was suffocating. Lila leaned over the edge. "Vera, it's just." A hand shot up from below, gripping the side of the boat. "Oh my God!" Lila screamed, slamming her oar against it. Vera grabbed her arm. "Get to the other side." Jason rose from the depths like something reborn. Water poured from his mask, his movements heavy but unstoppable. He dragged himself onto the boat, wood creaking under his weight. Lila swung the oar again, shattering it against his shoulder. It didn't even slow him down. "Get off," she cried. Jason's machete swung wide, cutting through the air, missing her by inches but cleaving through the hull. Water began to pour in. Vera grabbed the flare gun from the emergency kit. "Hey!" she shouted. Jason turned toward her, that awful, silent focus in his stance. She fired. The flare hit him square in the chest, igniting his soaked clothes in a burst of red flame. For the first time, Jason staggered. The light illuminated his face through the mask, half-rotted flesh, one milky white eye glaring through the fire. "Burn," Vera whispered. Jason toppled backward into the lake, his burning body sinking beneath the surface. The water hissed as it consumed him. The boat was half sunken by the time they reached the shore. Lila collapsed onto the dirt, gasping, shaking uncontrollably. "Is he dead?" she whispered. Vera looked out at the lake. Steam curled up from the surface. The ripples spread wider, then calmed once more. "For now," Vera said. "But he'll come back. He always comes back." They limped toward the tree line. The forest was dark, but a faint orange glow flickered through the fog ahead. "Is that fire?" Lila asked. Vera froze. "No." The glow grew brighter. It wasn't fire. It was light, lanterns, dozens of them, hung from the trees. A clearing opened before them, filled with wooden crosses and makeshift headstones. Graves. All bearing the same name, carved over and over. Voorhees. Vera stepped closer, trembling. His mother, she was buried here. From behind one of the graves came a sound, a low, rasping breath. And then a voice, old and cracked but unmistakable. "He's waiting for you, Vera." Vera turned, eyes wide. "Pamela?" But the grave was empty. Only Jason's mask lay on top of it, freshly cleaned, gleaming under the moonlight. Somewhere behind them, in the woods, the machete's blade dragged against a rock. Jason Voorhees was already walking again. The forest was alive with whispers. Not from the wind, but from something deeper, older, patient. Vera and Lila crept through the maze of trees, every branch snapping beneath their feet echoing like a scream. The lanterns swayed, casting shadows that looked like faces. The smell of decay hung thick in the air, seeping into their skin. They had stumbled into something unholy. Rows of wooden crosses stretched in all directions, covered in moss and old blood. Some of them bore photos, black and white portraits of children, smiling, frozen in time. But every single name on the graves was Voorhees. Lila clutched Vera's arm. "What is this? Why so many graves?" Vera's face was pale. "They're not real graves. They're offerings. I've seen this before." "Offerings to who?" "To her," Vera whispered. A cold wind swept through the clearing. Somewhere in the distance, a woman's voice began to hum, a slow, mournful lullaby. The sound floated through the fog like a memory resurrected. Lila's heart skipped. Who's singing? Vera closed her eyes. Pamela Voorhees. The humming grew louder, more human. It came from the small chapel at the far end of the clearing, an old structure, blackened by fire and barely standing. Candles flickered in its windows, though no one had lit them. Vera stepped forward, gripping the flare gun like a weapon. Stay behind me. They approached the chapel. Its door creaked open on its own, revealing a dark, narrow interior filled with hanging crosses and yellowed photographs. In the center stood a wooden altar, and on it, Jason's mask. The same one they'd seen burn in the lake. It's back, Lila whispered. Vera nodded slowly. He always finds his way home. As she reached for the mask, the humming stopped. The air thickened. And then, from the shadows, the voice came again, clear this time, echoing off the chapel walls. You should have left him alone. Vera froze. The voice was unmistakable, soft, gentle, maternal, and full of hate. Mrs. Voorhees, she whispered. You let him die. A shape began to form in the far corner of the room. It wasn't solid, half shadow, half memory, but it looked like her. Pamela Voorhees, in her old counselor sweater, her hair matted and gray, her eyes wide and feverish. You could have saved him, Vera, the ghost hissed. You could have saved my boy. Lila backed up, trembling. It's not real, it's not real. Pamela's head snapped toward her. You defiled his home. You disturbed his sleep. The candles flared violently, and Jason's mask began to bleed, thick, dark rivulets dripping down onto the altar. The floorboards pulsed like a heartbeat beneath them. Vera gritted her teeth. He's a killer. He was born of hate, and you made him that way. Pamela's face twisted, rage distorting her features. He was a good boy, she screamed. Until you murdered his mother and left him to rot. The sound of footsteps echoed outside the chapel, slow, deliberate, crushing leaves with each step. Jason was near. The walls shook as something slammed into the door. Once. Twice. On the third hit, the wood splintered. Vera snatched the mask from the altar, holding it high. You want your son? Take him. Pamela's ghost shrieked, dissolving into smoke. The mask pulsed in Vera's hands, as if alive. The temperature dropped so fast their breath turned white. The door shattered. Jason filled the doorway, his body blackened and steaming from the burns, water dripping from every seam. His machete gleamed red in the candlelight. Lila screamed. Vera, run. But Vera didn't move. She stepped forward, holding up the mask. Jason, she shouted. You don't need her. You don't need this. It's over. He froze, his head tilting ever so slightly, like he heard her. For a brief, fragile moment, she saw something human behind that mask. Something like pain. Then the mask in her hands shattered. The candles blew out. Darkness swallowed the room. The sound that followed wasn't human, a guttural roar of grief and fury that shook the chapel to its foundation. Jason lunged, his machete cleaving through the altar. Wood splintered, flames erupted, and the entire structure began to collapse. Vera grabbed Lila's hand and ran through the back wall as the chapel caved in behind them. They tumbled into the dirt, coughing, covered in ash. The burning chapel cast a red glow over the lake. Through the flames, they saw Jason walking out of the wreckage, unscathed, his mask whole again, his movements slower now, more deliberate, more furious. Pamela's voice whispered faintly in the air, like the last echo of a curse. Kill for me. Jason. The night sky above Crystal Lake was the color of dried blood. A red moon hung low and swollen, staining the water beneath it. The air was thick and heavy, humming with something unnatural, like the forest itself was alive and watching. Vera and Lila stumbled through the trees, half choked by smoke from the burning chapel. The ground beneath them trembled with every distant thud of Jason's footsteps. "He won't stop," Lila gasped. "He doesn't even run, he just keeps coming." "That's what makes him unstoppable," Vera said, clutching the flare gun close. "He doesn't chase. He hunts." They broke into the open clearing near the lake's edge. The water rippled unnaturally, reflecting the blood-red moon. It wasn't calm anymore, it was moving, swirling, as if something beneath was stirring to life. The curse had reached the water. From the opposite shore, something glowed. The old camp's dock, now half-rotted and forgotten, was bathed in crimson light. A fog rolled over it like breath from the dead. "We can't just keep running," Lila whispered. "We have to end it." Vera turned toward her, exhaustion in her eyes but defiance in her voice. "I tried ending it once. Fire, bullets, even drowning. Jason doesn't die. He just sleeps, until someone wakes him up." Lila swallowed hard. "Then we put him back to sleep." "How?" "We make him remember." They found what was left of the main resort building. It was empty now, doors hanging open, blood smeared across the floors, the walls echoing with distant drips. Every window had been shattered inward. Lila pointed toward the old display case near the lobby. Inside, cracked and half-buried under glass, was an artifact from the original camp, a photograph of Pamela Voorhees holding her son. Jason as a boy. Fragile. Pale. Smiling faintly beside his mother. Vera picked up the picture frame. He was just a child. And she turned him into a monster. "Then maybe the boy still exists somewhere in him," Lila said quietly. "Maybe that's how we stop him." A low thud answered her words. The sound of boots. Heavy. "Close. Hide." Vera hissed. They ducked behind a counter as Jason's silhouette filled the doorway. His body steamed in the red light. The mask gleamed like bone. Every movement was deliberate, his machete dragging along the tile with a sound like metal scraping on bone. He stopped near the center of the room. The air felt electric. Vera held her breath. Lila clutched her wrist so hard her nails dug into skin. Jason tilted his head. He knew they were there. Vera raised the photograph above the counter's edge, the glass catching the moonlight. "Jason," she whispered. His head snapped toward her voice. "Do you remember," she said, standing up slowly. "Your mother loved you. But she used you. She turned you into this." He stepped closer, silent. His breath rasped beneath the mask. "She's gone," Vera said, voice trembling. "And all that's left is hate. You can stop it. For a heartbeat." Jason stopped moving. His machete hung limp. The lake outside seemed to still. Lila thought she saw the faintest tremor in his hand, like something deep within him remembered. Then Pamela's voice came again, soft, tender, poisonous. "Don't listen to her, Jason. She wants to hurt you. Like they all did." The photograph shattered in Vera's hands. Jason roared. The sound wasn't human, it was grief and rage and centuries of rot. He lunged, slamming the machete into the counter, splintering it in half. Vera fired the flare gun into his chest. He barely flinched. Lila grabbed a shard of glass and slashed at his arm, nothing. He backhanded her into the wall like she was nothing but air. "Run!" Vera screamed. They tore through the side door, sprinting toward the shore. Behind them, the building collapsed in flames. Jason stepped out of the burning wreckage moments later, completely unharmed, the flames bending around him like he commanded them. The red moon glowed brighter above his head. The lake began to boil. Steam rose from the surface. The air filled with the scent of blood and sulfur. Vera dropped to her knees at the shoreline, tears cutting through the dirt on her face. "What do you want from me?" she screamed. From across the water, Jason stopped. He raised his head toward the moon, then toward her. And for the first time, she heard him, not a voice, but a feeling, like the earth itself speaking through her bones. "You left me to die." Vera clutched her chest, trembling. "I didn't kill you, Jason. I tried to help." The water exploded behind him. Something massive rose from beneath the surface, arms, torsos, faces, hundreds of them. The dead. His victims. Their corpses floated just below the surface, eyes open, mouths moving in silent screams. The lake had become his army. Jason stepped into the water. Each ripple burned red beneath his feet. Vera's voice broke. "Oh God, he's becoming the lake." Lila pulled her back. "We have to end this before sunrise." Vera looked out at the red reflection that spread wider and wider, swallowing the moonlight. "Then we end it where it began," she said softly. "At the bottom of the lake." The red moon hung higher now, bleeding light across the lake as if the heavens themselves were watching in horror. The forest was silent. Even the wind had died. Only the whisper of the water remained, moving in slow, deliberate pulses, like the heartbeat of something ancient and alive. Vera stood at the end of the broken dock, soaked, trembling, her reflection rippling in the black water. Beside her, Lila held the flare gun, her face ghostly pale under the moon's glow. The lake no longer looked like water, it looked like a mirror of blood. "He's down there," Vera said quietly, staring into the depths. "Where it all started. Where it always ends." Lila hesitated. "And you really think we can kill him down there?" "No," Vera whispered, her eyes glistening. "But we can bury him again." They tied a rope around their waists, fastening it to the rotted post at the edge of the dock. Vera lit a flare, its red light flickering like a dying star. Then, without another word, she stepped into the lake. The cold hit her like 1,000 knives. It felt alive, wrapping around her legs, pulling her under with a silent hunger. Lila followed, teeth chattering, her breath quickening as the water closed over their heads. Beneath the surface, there was no sound, only the muffled groans of the deep. Shapes moved in the darkness, drifting like shadows. Vera kicked down through layers of murky red until her light touched something solid. A cabin. The one they had unearthed days ago. The one Jason had once died in. Its roof was half buried in mud, its windows cracked, its doors swaying open in the water's current. The flare flickered against the old wood, revealing moss-covered walls and the faint outline of something nailed to the inside. Lila's eyes widened as she swam closer. It was Pamela Voorhees' decayed head, still resting on a makeshift altar of bones. Her eyes were gone, but her lips still seemed to smile. And beneath her, sitting motionless in the silt, was Jason. His body was enormous, pale, waterlogged, covered in lakeweed and scars. His mask, cracked and rotted, barely clung to his skull. His fingers twitched as if remembering the weight of the machete. Vera's breath caught in her throat. "He's waiting." The water vibrated. Then his head snapped upward. Jason's eyes opened, milky white and full of hate. The lake came alive. The rope around Vera's waist went taut as she was yanked upward. Lila screamed, bubbles exploding from her mouth as Jason surged from the mud like a corpse reborn. The water churned violently, a storm beneath the surface. He grabbed Vera's ankle and pulled her down. She clawed at the rope, trying to reach her knife, but his grip was iron. His mask loomed in the flare's light, cracked, distorted, dripping with blood. Lila dove toward him, firing the flare gun. The flare slammed into Jason's chest, exploding into fire under the water. The lake ignited in bursts of red light. Jason let out a silent roar, the bubbles ripping upward like shattered glass. Vera kicked free and pulled Lila toward the cabin. The heat above them was unbearable. The fire spread across the surface, trapping them below. "We're running out of air." Lila gasped, her lungs burning. Vera's eyes darted to the altar, to Pamela's head. An idea struck her. "He's bound to her," she said. "She's the curse. Destroy her, and maybe he dies too." She grabbed the flare from her belt and thrust it into Pamela's remains. The head ignited instantly, flames spreading across the bone and wood. The water screamed, literally screamed, as if the lake itself felt pain. Jason froze. His body convulsed. The mask cracked down the middle. For a moment, Vera thought she saw the face of a boy beneath, the drowning child, terrified and reaching for help. Then he lunged again, swinging his arm, smashing the cabin apart. The rope snapped. The world spun. Lila grabbed Vera's hand and kicked upward, but the water dragged at them, pulling them back toward the burning wreck. Jason rose after them, his movements slower now, his body disintegrating in the boiling current. "Keep swimming." Vera screamed, her throat raw. They broke the surface, gasping for air as flames danced across the lake. Smoke filled their lungs. Behind them, Jason erupted from the water one last time, half his face gone, bones exposed, eyes burning with hate. Vera raised the last flare. "Go back to sleep," she whispered, and fired. It hit him square in the face. The explosion was blinding. The dock shattered. The lake split open with a roar like thunder. Jason's body was engulfed in fire, dragging him back into the water. And then, silence. The red moon faded. The flames died. The water turned black again. Vera and Lila clung to the wreckage, coughing, shivering, staring at the calm surface that had just swallowed hell itself. "Is it over?" Lila whispered. Vera didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the lake. For the first time in years, it looked peaceful. Still. Maybe it was over. Maybe. But as dawn broke, and the first golden light touched the surface, something stirred at the bottom. A hand, blackened, half bone, half flesh, rose slowly from the mud, clutching the broken mask. The water rippled once. Then all was still again. The end. Legends don't die, they wait.